There's some great new additions to MIAP in version 2.2.0. The first one is a new JSUI external or object that is intended to be used in combination with MIAP.map to make map editing and authoring much easier and more fluid. So let me open up that help patch first, just as a simple example. I'm going to walk through all of these things in the MIAP.map help patch. But you have a UI external that sends different messages out and configures the MIAP.map to the states, all the different states that you might need to author a map. So we've got audition, we've got a button for creating speaker nodes, another one for creating virtual nodes, another one for derived nodes, another one for silent nodes. And these four buttons alone are very convenient because you have to change two things about MIAP.map. You have to change the mode, the interaction mode to create nodes, and then you have to change the node type. So this is combining that thing combining those two steps to make it nice and fluid. Then we have create trisets, create links, and then a last mode called select objects, a last state that combines previously two interaction modes that allowed you to edit nodes and edit links. And now this is basically a all-encompassing editing mode that lets you edit nodes, links, trisets, and a bunch of other stuff that I'll show you. So, and this is meant to be connected to the MIAP.map. So let's open the MIAP.map help patch. Let me go to the map authoring tab for a second. And first thing I'll do is I'll just demonstrate some of this stuff. So audition mode is just going to let me move around the mouse in mode. There's no nodes or no map created here. Let me click on speaker node. You can see that it switches to create nodes and node type speaker. And I will create 4 speaker nodes just as an example. Virtual node switches to virtual node. Put a virtual node in the center. Derived node. Add a derived node there. Let's add some silent nodes around the edge. This is similar to the example, Hello MIAP example. And then create trisets. So I will make some trisets. And all of this existing functionality is the same as it was before. If I click on it again, it deletes it. Let's create links. So let me click on the virtual node and then connect it to these 4 speaker nodes. And then I'll click on the drive node and connect it to in this case, just for now, the top 2 speaker nodes. So now I've gotten the ability to do everything that you need to do. Now I can make changes to these through the select objects. And this allows me to highlight objects and select them, both links. I can click on them directly. I can shift click one at a time, just like before, except now I'm combining links and nodes. Or I can select a bunch of things at once. And in this mode, it lets you edit in a way that is a little more intuitive than before. So let me click on, let's click on the speaker nodes. It shows that the link lines are also highlighted. Depending on what, now I'm going to right click on the map on one of the speaker nodes. And I get a drop-down window that gives me all the functionality that I might want to do, some new stuff that didn't exist before, and some old stuff that where I had to just edit the attribute objects over here manually. So I selected the 4 speaker nodes. Let me select just one initially. Right-click, opens up a window, lets me do some stuff we'll talk about in a second, copy and undo and redo. But I can change the speaker type, which would be like changing the node type over here. I can set the channel and trim, which would be like setting the node channel, node trim attribute here, but more intuitive. So click on channel. Let me set that to channel 2. And let's set this as 1. Let's set this to 3. Let's set this to 4. And I could select all of them and then change all of them at once as well. Let's set the drive node to 5. So we got 5 channels. All right, so now I got 5 different output channels. I can change the trim. Let's change the trim of all the speaker nodes at once. So if I select all of them and then right click on one of them, just like before, when I selected a bunch, it will edit all of them at the same time. So set trim, let's set the trim to 0.2, and you can see that it changed the trim for those to 0.2. Let me change the trim of the derived node to 0.5, and that will do it. Same thing as if I had clicked on the drive node and gone over here and set it, right? So it's just a much more intuitive way where you don't need to worry about the attributes. You can just think visually in the map. Okay, so those are some nodes. I can also change links. If I select on one or both, or I highlight in different ways. If I've highlighted two different link types, just like two different node types, it's going to know what I'm talking about depending on what I click on. So if I clicked on the virtual link, it knows that I'm talking about all the virtual links. If I click on the derived, it knows I'm talking about the derived. So for now, let's click on the derived links, both of them together, set the derived weight, and I'll change that, just choosing arbitrary things. Same thing for the virtual links. Let's set the virtual links to 1.1. So easy ways to change everything. Some other cool stuff. I can copy all, so I can select all, excuse me. I can do that, or I can right click, select all. You'll see as well shortcuts. The menu will only display things that are relevant. Right now I'm not clicking on any nodes, so it's showing me only the things that make sense. I can select all, I can there's an undo and redo that I'll talk about in a second. Or I can use hotkeys, and whenever there's hotkeys that correspond to these actions, it'll show you here. So this is the typical Command A or Control A for Windows that selects everything. And then I can delete everything, click the delete button. And I can now undo and redo up to 20 times. I have 20 undo and 20 redo steps. So if I click on here, I can undo, delete selection. I can keep undoing, setting virtual weights, and you can see also Command Z and Shift Command Z are hotkey mappings for this stuff. So I'm quickly undoing all of this stuff. It goes only back 20 steps. There it is. So undo and redo is really nice. It even shows you what it is that you're undoing and redoing. Select all. Okay, copy and paste. Well, one quick thing about this right click is that in select objects mode, that's the interaction mode that's intended for editing and changing things, not creating things. In these other modes where you're creating things, there's also right click ability, but it'll only show you again what makes sense. So only undo and redo is allowed in the create trisets. Create trisets mode is about creating and deleting trisets. Same thing for these other ones. I can right click and I get undo and redo. So in all the different different modalities, I can undo and redo, but I can only set these properties in this one select objects editing mode. Okay, so that's a bunch of the functionality. Let's see. I showed you, copy and paste. So let's do, let me just delete this. Let's make a little triset just as an example. All right. So if I go to select objects, I can select all of them. I can right click, I can copy it and then paste it. I can also, and wherever my mouse is where it's going to paste. I can also click Command V, and wherever my mouse is, it's going to paste that. I can undo it just like before. So I can select all, I can select it this way, copy, paste. This may be useful, may not. It's just it makes sense to have this functionality. Within one map, you can do this, so you can replicate different portions of the map like this. So that's copy paste. I think that's mostly everything here. So a bunch of right click context menu stuff, a bunch of hotkey stuff that's really convenient. This JSUI object, which is probably the biggest improvements in creating and interacting with maps. Also just a few other nice things. In the package, in the MISC folder, I have a new MIAP JSON format HTML file, and this is a file for people who are interested. You really don't need it unless you want to interact directly with the JSON maps and the JSON trajectory files. So this documents how those files are structured, so that maybe if you want to edit them or generate your own tools to author them or write scripts and so on, you have all the information for what these maps are doing and how they're structured. So that's kind of an advanced technical thing that may not be useful for most people. Also, we have a new example that has been requested a bunch of times, which is how to deal with multiple maps at the same time in a playback scenario. So I made an example of that using JavaScript scripting. You could also use the polytool object. You can find that here in the overview page. Also in the examples folder, you can just go directly to multi-map example, and there's a nice README file that walks through what it is, how to get going, talks about how you can use this as a template. But it's designed to kind of get you off and running if you want to author maps and then create a multi-map, multi-voice playback system. This gives you a nice place to start. It is initialized through a config file that lets you define how many voices you want. So it's arbitrary. I limited it to 25, but you could change the patch and add more if you want. But so this is an array of objects that define the map you're loading, the trajectory, and then all these different parameters that are related to MIAP: divergence, trajectory information, repetitions, playback rate, rotation, offset, scale, an audio file that you want to play. For these examples, I just used cycling files for ease, speed of playback, looping, and the gain. So just enough to serve as a foundation for adding more stuff. And you can look in the patch specifically how I parse this and apply it. But so you've got a config file that defines the initial state for all the voices and how many voices you have. And then if we open it up, there's a main patch that will automatically read that config file and instantiate the number of voices. We could easily change that. I can change this to, let's do 15 voices. And it's going to script all 15 of them. Because the config file only defined the first 4 voices, those are going to be initialized with maps and trajectories. The rest of them have not yet been defined. You could manually load that stuff in, or you can update the config file. So we've got a main tab that lets you change the number of voices. It'll default initially to the number that you've defined in the config file. It receives all the mix down here, and in this case I'm just kind of mixing it down to stereo and playing it as an example. And then you've got as just a simple example, some global controls where I can adjust every voice simultaneously, change the divergence, start and stop trajectory playback, and change the settings for that, start and stop audio playback and loop. This just serves as a simple example. If you unlock it, you can see how I'm doing it. I'm sending from main to each of the voices. And then the voices, they have miap.map. They have all of, loading the maps, loading trajectories, changing all those settings that you just saw, but on a per voice basis, and then audio playback, speed, gain, and then you can see then there's a MIAP tilde object, and you can see the level meters, and that's all going to be sending back here and mixing down. So let me show you as in a quick example. I'll just start the trajectories for all of them before playback, so you can see now they're all moving. And in the config, I set them all, use the same trajectory, and kind of rotated them and changed the speed, the direction of playback, and the offset and the scale, and so on. And simple example, start looping. And, need to turn the back. So, all mixing down, playing through the map. I can change individual controls if I want. Let me stop this. Let me start one at a time. Just a simple example showing you how you can make this happen, because this has been requested a bunch. So this is a nice example. Like I said, we can make more voices, less voices. I'm doing this with JavaScript. If we open this up and I show root, right-click on this bar here, and I can show the root, you'll see how I'm doing it in the folder. There's a script.miap, script.miap.json, or .js that's doing it all. And you can see how it's happening. This could easily be ported to using a polytilde instead of scripting tabs. But I wanted to provide one simple example that, this basically gets you up and running and provides 99% of the functionality that you want just for map control. You can add other stuff as well. So I think that's pretty much it. Single biggest thing is this JS UI and the right-click context menu functionality, and history undo and redo. So hope you guys enjoy.